This is Arise America.
Now, a man has died after being shot on the New York City subway system on Sunday. Police said the attack on the Q train into Manhattan appeared to be unprovoked. Witnesses say the gunman paced up and down the carriage before shooting the victim at close range. He died of his injuries in hospital. The suspect fled the scene at the next stop. A manhunt is now underway.
The preliminary investigation reveals that the 48-year-old man was riding on a Manhattan-bound Q train and seated in the last car of the train. According to witnesses, the suspect was walking back and forth in the same train car and without provocation pulled out a gun and fired it at the victim at close range as the train was crossing the Manhattan Bridge. When the train pulled into the Canal Street station, the suspect fled off the train.
Just want to again thank NYPD, transit police, and others who have been helping stem the crime on our system, although obviously today's incident is tragic. And as mentioned, we are cooperating with the police in this investigation with video and other evidence. So we look forward to finding this perpetrator and bringing the person to justice.
Well, let's cross live now to New York, where we're joined by Arise International Correspondent Faith Orr. Faith, good to see you. The details appear slightly sketchy. Do we know any more that's what's happened here?
So police have now released a CCTV image of the man that they are searching for. In the image, the suspect wearing a mask, white shoes and a dark-coloured hooded sweatshirt. Officers previously described the suspect as a dark-skinned male who is heavy-set and has a beard. Now, police are asking the public for help identifying this suspect. They, on top of releasing this image themselves, are asking people to check their phones if they have any photos or videos that could have been taken around the time of the incident to submit those to the police. A reward is being offered. Now, officials are fairly sure this was an unprovoked attack. Witnesses said they saw the man pacing up and down the carriage before pulling out a gun and shooting the victim at close range. Now, this took place on the Q line train as the train was heading from Brooklyn into Manhattan. And the incident itself was over quite quickly. It took place on the Manhattan Bridge, and the shooter got off at Canal Street, which is just the next stop as you get into Manhattan. Now, this was late on a Sunday morning, usually around the time where families are out, people are, enjoying their weekend. There's a lot of tourists on the go. On this occasion, the victim was the only person hurt, but we have heard from police that they've sent a lot of extra officers down into the subway system now to patrol. Having said that, I was on that very line yesterday evening, going from Manhattan to Brooklyn, and I didn't see a single police officer despite this taking place.
Faith, we've just saw some snapshots of the victim that was shot. Do we know any more about him?
Yes, so the victim was 48-year-old Daniel Enriquez. Now, he was born in New York. He lived in Park Slope in Brooklyn, just pretty close to where I am just now, actually. Now, he was heading into Manhattan for brunch when he was killed at 11:40 in the morning. He studied at New York University. He'd spent most of his life here. He worked for Goldman Sachs in the city. He had worked for them for 9 years. The firm described him as a beloved employee, and they've expressed their distress and their condolences to the family, said they were devastated to hear the news. We've also heard from his family. His sister says that she idolized her brother, that the whole family is devastated, that they're actually quite a close-knit family. The parents are in their 70s. They're no longer in New York. They said they last heard from him around an hour before he was killed, and that during the pandemic, he'd managed to teach himself 2 languages, as well as learning to play the guitar and the piano. So certainly it feels like someone who really, lived life to the full. But his sister says now he's become a statistic, and the family understandably angry, and they are calling on the mayor to crack down on gun violence.
And you mentioned statistics. I mean, this isn't an isolated incident. It was just over a month ago there was an attack in Brooklyn on the subway. This seems to be an ongoing occurrence now.
Yeah, I mean, this shooting really does come at a time when New Yorkers' faith in the subway system has been somewhat shaken. As you said, last month, a man opened fire in Brooklyn. Now, he actually shot 10 people and wounded several others when he threw gas canisters. Suspect in that case, Frank James, also fled the scene, but he then phoned police the next day, told them where he was, and they went and picked him up. We also saw in January a 40-year-old woman. She worked for Deloitte, Michelle Go. She was pushed in front of an oncoming subway train. And we know in that case, the suspect in that case, he was suffering from schizophrenia, and he was actually later decided that he was unfit to stand trial. Now, Mayor Eric Adams, he took office in January. He has pledged to crack down on crime. He is a former police officer, former transit safety officer, and he's increased the number of officers on the subways in an attempt to reassure the public. He's also released a plan to address homelessness on the subway. He actually took the subway to City Hall on his first day of work, and he said that he was quite scared because there were homeless people yelling, there was other passengers yelling at each other. He said, you can understand why people would feel shaken. And he said that the city needs to tackle actual crime, but also the perception of crime. Most of the crime in New York isn't on the subway, but people do still feel vulnerable there. And it's not just the subway, but buses too. This is the fourth killing on New York Transit and public transport in the city this year.
And just quickly before you go, Faith, talk about people feeling vulnerable. As you said, you've used the line in the last 24 hours. Is there a sense of nervousness by anybody, or does it seem business as usual on the subway?
No, it does seem pretty much business as usual, to be honest. I mean, some people you can tell are a little bit nervous, but no, I mean, I encountered musicians, people going home from nights out last night. Everyone seemed fairly jovial, and many weren't even aware that this incident had happened. I mean, there is more of a nervousness, I think, around the stations, darkened areas nearby when the streets are a bit quieter, perhaps in some areas of Brooklyn. People are a little bit more nervous, but in general, no, New York as a city carries on.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your analysis this evening.
This is Arise America.